So today we are talking about how to enhance our speaking confidence in English in professional settings. I will say that, of course, this can be expanded to any setting, right? It doesn't just have to be professional, but especially since all of you, I think, have the goal of increasing your fluency, your vocabulary, all those things, especially in order to find a job. Then that's why we're having that particular focus today. So we're going to talk about a few different things. First, I will talk briefly about some of the psychology of confidence. Why is confidence so important? How can we increase our confidence? I will talk briefly about fillers and what those are and how to reduce them in our language. We'll also briefly, not in much detail, but briefly talk about some areas of language that you can focus on in order to feel more confident. And I will touch on the importance of listening and asking for clarification, as well as vocabulary building. How can you increase your vocabulary? And of course, as all of you mentioned, the practice part. How can you practice on a regular basis? I think this is some advice that one of my language teachers told me many years ago when I was studying Arabic. He said, even 10 minutes a day is better than, let's say, 2 hours in 1 week. So the practice, but very regular practice, and doesn't have to be necessarily a long session, because it's reminding your brain to think in that other language. It's reminding you of vocabulary. So that's, if you remember one thing or take away one thing from today, it's just to give yourself not a hard time, and just to give yourself the time to do a little each day. So let's talk briefly about confidence. And some of you are probably familiar. This is not just for language learning, this is for everything. But according to research, confidence can have a significant impact on language learning progress and success. So, not just how successful you are, but how long it takes you to get to a higher level. So, that's why it is so important, because you can get further in your goals faster if you're more aware of the role of confidence. Why is that? So, confidence in your ability to learn. And that's an important differentiation, to remember that it's not about your confidence in your language, because, of course, you are a learner, so you will make mistakes, but it's your confidence in your ability to learn. So if you say to yourself, I I can learn English. I can become a better English speaker, versus I am not good at languages. I don't see any progress in the last year, right? So those are two different ways of looking at yourself. So the person who is confident in their learning is also more willing to make mistakes. And that is a very key part of the practice, right? And the confidence. So when we give ourselves the opportunity to practice and make mistakes, it leads to improvement and learning. And really, there is no learning without mistakes, right? So if you, let's say you're in a class or you're in the business English club, wherever you are, and you feel nervous to make a mistake, just remind yourself, this is what I need to do to get better. And it's actually a good thing, right? A mistake is actually a sign that you're making an effort to learn. And on the other hand, right, if you lack confidence in yourself and you say, I'm not going to make any progress anyway. Why should I try? This is difficult. I'm already, stressed. I'm looking for a job, which is very stressful. I don't have time to focus on language. This could lead, right, to you avoiding taking the opportunity to practice, and it will slow down your learning progress, which then, right, is this vicious cycle. You don't see progress, so you don't feel motivated, and it kind of continues downwards. So try as much as you can to listen, right, to a positive voice related to language learning. If you need any tips on motivational things, I'm happy to share those. But mostly it's understanding what is your attitude about language learning and what is your attitude about you as a learner in general. And if there are some negative feelings or ideas, how can you uh, have a more positive relationship with those? So, how to increase your confidence, in addition, is not just cultivating a positive mindset, but also, as I said, being unafraid to make mistakes, focusing on, and this one is really important and I think sometimes overlooked, is to focus on your active listening skills. Active listening involves listening not with the intention to respond, but listening to understand. So when we're listening to understand in a second language, a language that is not ours, we're also able to catch more new vocabulary. We're able to hear the person's accent. This is very important for increasing your pronunciation, is to listen to native speakers. And I think that it's less stressful because you're not thinking, what do I need to say? You're just listening. And when you listen in that way, you can also ask better questions because maybe there's some area that you realize you didn't understand. The other tip I would have is to focus on your overall progress. So let's say within the month of March, this month, you attended 2 webinars in English from Upwardly Global. You tried let's say, one business English club evening, and you listened to 2 podcasts in English. Right? Every day it's not that much, but if you look at the whole month, that is progress, and it's much better than doing nothing. Maybe there was a few moments where you were able to practice, or there were certain new phrases that you learned. So that, even just that, is progress. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe you say, I wanted to do my studying every day, but still it's good. So stay focused on what you did do. And if you want to do better the next week or the next month, that's always a possibility, right? But stay in a good mindset and good positive thinking with your learning progress. And of course, the practice part is about looking for and taking the opportunities to practice. So I will share some additional resources today if you're not sure how to get that practice. And everyone is going to be different. Everyone has a different schedule, a different goal, right? So I also would like you to think about, what are your personal learning goals? And related to that, how much practice will you need to reach that goal? Is it realistic, your goal? Or do you need to break it into smaller chunks, right? So to have a weekly goal, to have a monthly goal, and then to have, let's say, a 6-month goal. I think, right, this thinking is helpful in any aspect of your life, but especially language learning requires a lot of discipline and regularity, right? So planning those goals by week, by month, by 6 months or year will help you sort of understand, are you making that progress or not? And because we're on the topic of confidence and ways to increase the confidence, one thing we talked about also in our Business English Club, but I'm going to repeat it here, is that fillers are really common and they're not bad. They're used by native speakers, by non-native speakers, when we need a moment to pause and think. So we say things like, so, like, and I'm sure, right? We have these in every single language, in Polish, in Ukrainian, in English. See, I just did one. So the only thing that I want to mention here with confidence is that when we overuse these words, especially in an interview setting or in a presentation setting, let's say you're giving a presentation at a meeting, that you want to be aware of how often you use those words, because when we overuse them, it can make us appear less professional, less articulate, or less thoughtful. So, one way to reduce that is, first of all, to have the awareness. So, I always recommend that people use their smartphone to record themselves speaking. If you're doing an interview practice with, for example, your job coach, put your recorder on, or ask your coach to record you if it's on a Zoom call, for example. And then you can become aware what are the fillers that you use most often. And also, I think slowing down is one way to make sure that you don't overuse them, because when you slow down, you have more time to think, so your idea is catching up with your words. And to embrace pauses, there is something that when the US had President Obama as a president, it was called the Obama pause. He is known to be a really strong public speaker. And in order to make his audience listen very attentively, he would very selectively place a pause when he wanted to make a point. So a pause can be actually a very positive thing to practice. It can make your speech more elevated, more professional, and it also, the same as slowing down, gives you time to think. So don't be afraid, for example, in an interview, to have a pause. When you say, oh, let me think about that for a moment, you can have a pause and then you can collect your idea and speak, instead of starting right away and saying, yeah. So, right, that is less of an impressive way to speak than taking your time and taking a pause. There are some common pronunciation mistakes. I'm not saying that this is your mistake, but commonly, because of the different sounds in English versus Ukrainian, these are some sounds that many people have difficulty. So the TH, the ING in thing, the R sound, which is different in British English versus American English, and the W sound, when, versus the V sound. So instead of saying then, saying when. So I will, when I share this presentation with you over email, you can feel free to click in, and each sound you will see a worksheet that has different examples and where you can listen. So if you feel that you have difficulty with these sounds, I would recommend that you take some time to practice each one. And in general, if you feel that your pronunciation is an area that you would like to improve, again, I would recommend recording yourself to listen back to see where are those issues, how can you increase your pronunciation and fluency. I also would recommend listening. Listening is one of the best things, and in addition to practice, listening and hearing the language regularly is really, really good. So you're already doing that tonight by listening to me. So good job. But other ways that you can do that are through audiobooks. There are a lot of great books on audio now. TED Talks, they are online. I will share the link. They're completely free and very interesting. There are also many, many other podcasts that are focused on language learning, specifically English language learning, which I will also share. And then one of the, I think the most common and enjoyable ways to learn a language, in addition to speaking, is watching English language movies or shows. So I know that for many people, Netflix is popular. I'm also a Netflix addict, unfortunately. But the good thing is that you can both, be entertained and learn. And so, that's a great way to even listen to different types of accents. You can put the subtitles on and read along in English. And then when you're speaking, try to copy the way you know that person sounds. So mimicking is a really good way. That's exactly how children learn. They're just, making the same sound that they hear. Another way is listening and writing, right? So if you're listening to a podcast or you're listening to a presentation, also try to get in the habit of taking a notebook and writing words down as you hear, because the transfer of, right, what you hear to the paper is another process to help really build your listening and vocabulary. And one very important aspect of listening is listening and then asking a question after. So part of that is the active listening, uh, seeking clarification. So asking if you didn't understand something is really important. And it's important in the professional setting because many times we are speaking with people in order to communicate, right? You have a project that you're working on together, or you have some very important information that you need them to understand or that you need to understand. So if we are not reaching the understanding, it's important to know, how can I deal with the situation? How can I practice asking questions? How can I stay professional and polite when I'm asking those questions? It also shows that you're paying attention, right? So if you're in an interview and they were talking very quickly in English, you didn't catch everything. You didn't catch 100%. In that situation, it would be very important to take a moment to say, I'm so sorry, but could you repeat that one more time? I didn't catch that. So, here below are a few helpful phrases. Of course, there are many, many more. And one of our weeks in the Business English Club, we did go over some of those phrases. So, if you're interested, I can also send you that presentation, but it also is in our Google Drive. But for today, the ones that I would like to share are very simple. Would you mind repeating that? And how we say this, our intonation here is important, right? So a question, always the intonation goes up. Would you mind repeating that? Could you explain a bit more about that topic, right? This is if we're in a meeting, someone shares an idea that you didn't quite catch. Or you can say, I want to be sure I got it right. Can you explain this and this and this again? You can also say, I'm sorry, I missed that. Could you repeat it, please? So if you Google, helpful clarification phrases, you will see many, many more, but these are just a few to get you started. These are good to really know so that when you're in the situation, you have a ready to go question at hand. And if anyone, by the way, anyone as I'm speaking has questions, please unmute yourself and ask so we don't lose your question. Vocabulary building is also very, very important for your confidence, right? If you don't have enough words to speak and to say what you want, it becomes very difficult to feel confident. So, my recommendation is to try as much as you can regularly to build your vocabulary slowly. Of course, even as a native speaker, I'm never going to know the meaning of every single word. That is not the goal. The goal is to get a little higher level than you are now. So the main things that can help you get there is number one, reading. Reading is so crucial. I know that it's not a very popular activity anymore, but if you can set aside 10 to 20 minutes a day to read an English article or to read a simple English book. I had, for example, a friend who was reading Harry Potter. It's a long book, but it's simple vocabulary for the most part. And, you know, as you read, to have another notebook on your side, or if you prefer to use your phone, and to write down the vocabulary that's new that you need to look up. And looking it up, for example, in a dictionary right in that moment, that process of reading and looking up new words is very powerful to increase your vocabulary. And as I said, right, writing down new vocabulary and reviewing it. So having a separate little booklet. Let's say every week you decide, I'm going to just add 5 new words to this booklet. And in that way, right, at the end of the month, you have 20 new words. And that's a lot of words. Times that by more months. Watching, as I had already mentioned, like watching TV shows or movies in English with the subtitles on. Subtitles in English. That is an important thing to do because you will be listening, you will be hearing the word, and at the same time, if you didn't catch it auditorily, then you will visually be able to see it on the screen. I had a friend who was Turkish, whose English was extremely fluent and really great accent. And I asked him, how did you learn your English? And he said, I watched tons and tons of movies. So it really does work. And especially if you're a movie lover, this is a really good method. And of course, last but not least, practicing using those new words. So not just writing them down and forgetting about them, but saying, okay, I learned this new word. How can I create a sentence with it? How can I bring it into the conversation during my English lesson or my English club?
May I ask
And
you please about watching movies or TV shows?
sure.
For example, I have such problem when I try to watch something. I don't know why. I don't understand. I don't know, 30-40%. Is it okay? Is it normal? Because when I can speak with people, it's okay. I can understand, of course, everything. But when I try to watch something, it seems like I don't know English at all, you know? It's very strange and very hard, but I have to keep going or I have to do something else. Can you tell me, please, about this approach?
Yeah. That must be frustrating to not feel like you're understanding because your speaking is really quite high. So I'm wondering, when you are listening, are you adding the subtitles or no?
Yeah, I'm trying to do it because I can't catch every single word, as you said. Yeah, but I can understand common meaning, but not every single word to understand. As you said, to increase my vocabulary.
Yes. I would say, yeah, first of all, I think it's still really a good activity to do, even if it feels frustrating because you're not catching everything. But of course, maybe you're catching the storyline from the images, right? You're catching
Mhm.
some sounds, the way the person is saying certain words that you did understand. And so don't feel like you should give up on this activity completely. Maybe the goal should be lower. Maybe the goal should be, I will understand the main idea in the story. I will not understand
Mhm.
every single word. I will understand what the story is about. I will hear some ways that people use phrases and words. And I think that the subtitles should help, and repeating. Let's say you have a show or a movie, repetition. So maybe it's less interesting, not as exciting, but if you can go back and watch it again, that might also be a helpful activity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. And maybe you can advise, please, some films or something to watch, because from time to time I understand that I'm trying to watch something that I read that it's very good for beginners, for example, and I understand that it's with a big accent. And for example, Scottish or Birmingham or something like this, and I totally can't understand what they're talking about. That is why it's very hard to understand what I have to watch exactly, and which accent, which pronunciation I have to listen.
Yes, that's a great additional question. And I was going to add that depending on the accent of the person, it might be harder or more easy. So this is maybe just my bias because I'm American and not British. And because the area that I'm originally from, California, has a more easier accent than other areas in the US. For example, the South, Texas, this has a heavier accent. So my recommendation would be, and again, this is my own opinion, maybe other people have a different opinion, but I think that the American from certain states is easier to understand than British or Irish accents. So because we have Hollywood, right, it will be easy to find those movies and those shows, I think. And you never know, maybe in a movie there will be a character from another state with a heavier accent. Like even the New York accent, for example, can be difficult to understand. They tend to talk really quickly. So yeah, that would be my only advice is if you can seek out the accents, that are not obscure or not from, yeah, British. I believe for me, even for me personally, British accents can be difficult to understand.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering.
Sure. Anyone else have a question while we're paused here? Okay. So one thing that I love about podcasts, I listen to a lot of podcasts as well, is that you can do them as you're doing other things, right? So like a movie, you're sitting down, you're watching the screen, and I'm sure all of you are really busy with all the things in your life. So the nice thing, if you have even just 30 minutes, maybe you're on the bus, maybe you're driving, maybe you're walking somewhere, or you're cleaning. If you're doing any activity, you can also at the same time listen to a podcast. And some of my favorite ones that are especially, not all of these, but some of these are especially for English learners, and some of them are just for native speakers. So, for example, Coffee Break English is for learners. They have a theme and they go through that theme. This American Life is also, every episode is based on a theme, but it's just for native speakers. And what I like about This American Life is that they do have interviews with people from all over the US. So you will be exposed to a broad range of accents, because even if it's difficult sometimes to understand, we have to also expose ourselves to the different accents, because the reality is when you go into the workplace, maybe you will be working with someone from China, maybe someone from India, maybe someone from the US, right? It will be usually an international mix at a multinational company. And so the more we expose our ears to the different accents, the better we will be prepared in the situation where probably you have to hear English spoken by other non-native English speakers. So just a side note. And yeah, you're free to, when I send the presentation, you can click and see which ones of these you like and prefer. BBC Radio, of course, because it's from BBC, will be British English. And I think each story is just 6 minutes long about some news story. So that's also, right, we all have like 5 extra minutes somewhere in our day to listen to something. And again, the goal should not be 100% understanding. The goal should be, today I listened to a native speaker, today I listened to something in English, and maybe I learned something new and interesting, just in the 5 or 10 or 15 extra minutes that you have doing something else. And there are many more that you can also find online. Like I said, I usually have them on my phone, and then as I'm doing things, right, I can listen at the same time. I also really want to highlight the use of TED Talks. If you're in the Business English Club, you probably also have seen some of these that I've shared, but the nice thing also with TED Talks is that, of course, you can put your subtitles on, so you can listen and read at the same time, and even better, you can read the transcript afterward. So, right, if you didn't, let's say you caught 60% of what the person said, you can go back, read through the transcript, underline, right, new vocabulary, just make sure that your comprehension is even higher. And TED Talks has one additional, let's say, sub program, which is TED Ed. And TED Ed is especially created for learning. Now it's created for children, but I feel that it's even good for adults, because things are very simplified, the stories are simplified, and you can choose based on your interests. You can choose the subject, and within the subject there are many different videos. So for example, if you're interested in health or technology, right, you can click there and you will see a nice array of different videos. You can also, what's different about TED Ed versus TEDx is that there are resources to even go more into the topic. So after you watch it, you can look at additional resources, you can look at the vocabulary, you can see different discussion questions to check if you understood the meaning. So it's almost like, think of it as like an online lesson based off of a video. And I think, as we discussed, like practice, there's no replacement for practicing. There just isn't. And practice can be really uncomfortable sometimes, because we're put in a situation where maybe we will make a mistake. Maybe we will feel shy or embarrassed, but there is nothing that will improve your language more than practicing. And so I really encourage all of you, if you are serious about your progress with English, and you do feel like you want to get to a higher level, especially for your profession, then looking at how you can join a language community is going to be really important. And in those communities, whether it's a class or a club or even an online course, you will be able to apply and refresh what you know now already, because most of you have a very good foundation already. And you will be able to learn and practice new words and new phrases, and most importantly, become more comfortable speaking and become more confident, because you have this experience behind you of, I have been uncomfortable and I have gotten through it, and it wasn't the end of the world, right? So this will carry over to your confidence in an interview, or maybe your interview will not be in English, but they will ask you, what is your level? Do you feel comfortable leading a meeting? Do you feel comfortable giving a presentation? Do you feel comfortable talking to a client on the phone in English? And all of those things, right, will be easier if you have the practice behind you. So there is an additional resource document attached here. that is, created from our program. But just a reminder that there is a great program called Engine. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Engine or Engin. And unfortunately, though, it's only for individuals under 35. But if you are under 35, right, they will match you with a language partner, and you will meet, I believe, once a week and practice your language with them. So having a language partner is really, really nice opportunity. Also, of course, you can join our Business English Club, which happens every evening on every Wednesday evening from your time, 19 to 20 o'clock. And of course, any webinar that you attend, like this one, also, of course, it's not active practice in terms of speaking, but it is active practice in listening. So I do encourage you to attend our webinars if the topic that we are covering is useful and interesting to you. Of course, courses as well. I'm sorry, I didn't finish that bullet point, but the courses, right, can be in person, depending on what city you live in Poland, right? The university offers courses. There are also an in-person speaking club in Warsaw, which is totally free, and you can check out their Facebook group if you would like to join. I have been in touch with the person who runs it, and they always welcome new members. So that's every Monday at 5 p.m. in Warsaw. And that's it from me for today, but I would love to hear any questions that you have. What are your challenges with increasing your confidence, or how do you think Upwardly Global can support you, or any other questions or concerns that you have? And any question is a good question, because it's probably likely that someone else has the same question as you. So you're helping the group when you ask a question.
And I'm really sorry for one.
Can you repeat that? I think your connection is breaking up a little.
Also, I want to. Can you recommend? Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Could you repeat your question one more time?
Thank you so much. Again, advice is more grammar. Or it could be practice with watching TVs again, movies, reading on speaking clubs, or I don't know. How it's better to learn grammar?
Okay, your question is, what is the best way to learn and practice grammar?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, sorry, because you were breaking up a little bit in the audio again. I think with grammar, grammar is a challenge to do on your own. But you can, right? There's a lot of good books that break down different grammar structures. If you go online, let's see, I do have also a lot of online resources, but in specifically for grammar, I would recommend. Let's see, what is it called? I will follow up with you with the link in my follow-up email, but there's a site called Perfect English Grammar, and you basically read an explanation and then do an exercise. And I think that I'll just drop it in the chat here. That's one way, is to look at what are some online resources that you can use. And of course, the applied grammar is when you practice speaking. So you can learn the grammar rule and you can memorize it, but if you don't take the step of practicing, right, it will not be as useful. So I would always combine your grammar practice and focus with real life practice, because then you have the opportunity to implement it, right? And you can do that in a speaking club. You can do that in a more formal language class. And you will also find that on any online course. So if you are part of our program, as you probably are, you could do EF language, you can do Coursera, right? You can do any of those online courses, and choose specifically to focus on grammar.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Because I have again a little problem with grammar. When, for example, of course, the main tenses, of course, I know, but sometimes it connected with exceptions or small things you just have to know and just to remember. And for example, if only or if when you prepositions or something like this, when you don't use it permanently, you just forget it without practice. And I just don't know in which way I have to practice it all the time.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I think that's a good point that you made, is that many times if we don't, there's a saying for language learning, if you don't,
Thank you so much for answering.
sure, no problem. You're breaking up a little bit again, but I was going to say, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So what you were saying in terms of not remembering, right, from what you already learned, like where and how can I use it? That's why I think the active practicing is so important, so that you can remember what you already know and keep building, instead of, right, losing a lot of the knowledge that you already had. Anyone else have a question? Thank you, Maya, for your question.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
If
Lorena,
not,
I
yes.
have a question. Yes.
Maybe.
What about business English, and what resources of business English you recommend, actually?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the worksheet that is linked in the presentation, you will see, let's see if I can find it and put it in our chat as well. You will also see the business English specific courses. I would also recommend, if you have Coursera, to do a quick search of business English there. LinkedIn Learning also has a pretty good array of resources. If you are a holder of the LinkedIn Premium account, you also have access to LinkedIn Learning. And in general, I would say there are different scenarios that you want to practice your vocabulary for, specific to the business English. But if you practice on your English skills in general, the business English will come with it, if that makes sense. Because, of course, business English is, category, but, right, the grammar, the vocabulary, all of that is also foundational. So definitely seek out the specific courses on online learning platforms, but also know that your knowledge in general will help in those settings. And of course, I'm always plugging the Business English Club that we have every week. That is a really focused time that we focus on those specific situations or specific phrases or specific vocabulary that you do come across in a business setting. So you're welcome to join those. And here is the document that is also in the presentation that has a lot of different language learning resources. And this is what it looks like. And if you have any to share that I can add, I'm more than happy to update this. But you will see here, we have the Polish resources, Business Polish. We also have, of course, the English resources, and you will see like with the language, the course, the level and requirements, and the sign up link. All of these are free of charge. You should not have to be able to, you should be able to do them without paying anything. And if any of these, if you have any experience to report back in addition, right, I always like to hear, like, how are these resources working for you? I want also add here the EF, because EF is part of our program, and after you complete 6 months, you can also renew that subscription to EF. So for any of you on the call who have already been part of our program for 6 months, you don't have to lose that EF language access. You can just renew it very easily. So here is the link to this document. And yeah, I hope that answered a little bit of your question, Irina.
Yes, thanks a lot, actually, because it was my next question about the access to such lists. So thanks a lot.
Sure, no problem. Anyone else before we end our call today? And if anyone has a follow-up question later on, you can reach me over email. My email is also on the presentation, Lorena@Upwardly Global, and you can also find me on LinkedIn if you prefer to communicate there. I try to respond as quickly as I can. And thank you everyone for joining this evening. I will be happy to see you next week for our next webinar, or even tomorrow for our Business English Club. And in the meantime, yeah, take care of yourselves, and I hope that some of these tips and resources will come to use for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It was interesting today to listen to
I
you, as
have
always.
questions.
Good to hear that.
Uh,
Thank you.
I have questions, Lorena.
Yes, sure.
Maybe you I am sorry.
Take your
I want to have link in our chat about English speaking club in Warsaw.
You would like to know more about the English Speaking Club in Warsaw?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So the link is in the presentation, which I will share, but I can also share it here in our chat. And this is
Yeah.
the one that happens every Monday at 5 p.m. Here's the link, Facebook link. If you don't have Facebook, I'm not
offline.
sure.
Yeah.
It's offline, it's in person, correct.
Offline, yes. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, and I think, they're very welcoming. They're very open to new members. Beginner and advanced is the level. And then as for the link to our Business English Club, unfortunately, because I'm not in Poland, it is online. So we meet on Zoom, and here is the link. You will only be required to register once, and after you register, you can attend every week after without re-registering. But I send a reminder in our LinkedIn group and also via our Telegram group. So if you forget, don't worry, I always try to remind people to join. But here's the link to do the one-time registration. I hope that works. Yes.
I'm sorry, and where is the link? How I can join a Telegram group?
The Telegram group, let's see if I can find it. It's a QR code, so not actually sure if I can share it here. Would you mind sending me an email with the request and I can email the QR code to you?
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
Thanks.
I have this group. I find this group on Facebook. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Let me know how it goes. I'm curious to see if it's a good opportunity. And maybe there will be other people from Upwardly Global there. I'm not sure. Okay. Thank you everyone so much and see you next time. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Goodbye.
See you next
Bye.
time.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Bye.